Good evening and welcome to the Kuhn Academy for this second installment of AP US History, where we're not just learning history, we're making history. Okay, we're going to pick up with the causes of the Depression with the effects of the Great Depression. So how did the Depression get from Wall Street, where the stock market crash kind of started things off, to Main Street, where towns like Mundelein, Wakanda, Libertyville, or Chattanooga, Tennessee were all feeling the effects on their Main Street. All right. First, I want to show you a photo. This is probably the most famous photo of the Great Depression, called Migrant Mother. Dorothea Lange was one of a bunch of photographers hired to kind of go out and see the plight of these people, agricultural people living through the Great Depression. And the photo just, says a lot. I mean, if you kind of take a look at it, here's this mother. She looks beat up. You see the the worn out hands. She's wearing the farmer's clothes. Kind of scrappy looking, and her kids just not even willing to look in the camera, burying their head in her, kind of depressed for the life that they're living, because she's a migrant. She's moving from place to place looking for work and really has no answers. And that's kind of sums up how a lot of people experience the Depression, especially in rural USA. All right. So what made it a depression? National income dropped by half. Okay, so the amount of money people were taking in across the board dropped by half. There's just nothing being spent anymore. Right? People were literally selling apples on street corners because that was all they could do. It was the only money they could make. Right? 85,000 businesses closed. That might not seem like a large number today, but if you think about it back then, how many gas stations did Mundelein have? How many restaurants did Mundelein have? Okay, how many dry cleaners? Maybe one. So if that one business, if that one restaurant in Mundelein goes down, think what that community is losing. Okay, 400,000 farmers lost their land through foreclosures. So you can start to see why people are leaving the rural areas of America and moving to the cities, because the farmers obviously were hit a lot much harder than the business owners were. All right. Moving along, all right? During the Great Depression, when the bank collapsed, all right, we're talking about bank failures here. What exactly happened, all right? If the bank collapsed, what would happen? Pause your video here. And the correct answer is D, all right? The depositors lost their savings. There was no safety net, all right? If the bank ran out of money and had nothing to pay back its depositors, it went belly up and you had nothing. The movie It's a Wonderful Life shows a great scene about a bank run, and Jimmy Stewart, the character in that, does a great job explaining what a bank run looks like. Even though it wasn't set during the Depression, it's kind of describes what it looked like. All right, 6,000 banks in the nation failed. That's 1/4 of the nation's total. So if there were 4 banks in Mundelein, one of those 3 would have went under. That's 1/4 of the town that lost their savings, their investments, and everything. People couldn't repay their loans. All right. Now that's kind of a twofold problem, because number one, the bank's not getting its money back that it loaned you to buy the stock market, buy a new house, buy a car, buy a radio. And then the people who put their money in the bank doesn't just keep that. They turn around and loan that out to people so it can make money on the interest of the money it loans out. And the bank didn't have that to give people. All right, so bank failures were very common then, and this would just wipe out family fortunes and savings. There were no investments other than a savings account. All right, you saw hunger, aimlessness, mental depression increase dramatically, okay, because of what people were going through. Sometimes maybe just one meal a day. There's some websites that'll show you the prices of things and what it would have cost to live during the Depression for that. Nothing really to measure that statistic. All right. Probably most importantly was unemployment. At its peak of the Depression, 1932. That's a bad year if you're Herbert Hoover, because that's your election year. Okay, 25% unemployment. All right. Right now it's at about 10 or 11%, and we think that's too high. So imagine more than double what current unemployment is. That's what the Depression was like. All right. 3/4 of the nation's cities banned married women from holding jobs as teachers. All right. Now most teachers were women back then. That was kind of the female profession, especially at the elementary level. But the reason they didn't let them hold jobs was that was a job they were taking from the husband. If the married woman was working, her husband probably was too. So they told the woman, you couldn't teach because your husband has a job. We're going to hire unemployed men to teach the classes. And a lot of kids went back to work, so the child labor movement kind of suffers a bit of a setback during the Depression. All right, farm foreclosures were huge. Farmers became tenant farmers. We remember that from the Great Depression. Okay, they just started working for the bank, giving the bank their profits. How productive are they going to be? not vary. Okay, farmers would pour their milk and crops down, or destroy their crops and pour the milk down the sewers, and we'll explain why here in a second. All right. Why would a farmer during the Depression, when people are hungry, people are starving, selling apples on a street corner, why would he destroy their crops as opposed to feeding these people? Okay, and the correct answer is, pause it, B, to reduce the supply. All right, it cost these farmers more money to keep their milk that they were selling for next to nothing. It cost more money than it did to just destroy it, pour it down the drain. And what they're also hoping was that the government would step in and say, this is wrong, we need to help you. And that's one of the New Deal reforms we'll talk about Monday when you all get back. All right, so the results of the election, 1932, okay, Herbert Hoover defeats Al Smith 4 years earlier in close to a landslide victory. The country totally changes its tune. You see a realignment of the American political system. African Americans and women who had traditionally been strong Republican voters have shifted now to the Democratic Party and have forever been in the Democratic Party. All right, you can probably make a good inference here about Herbert Hoover. Great Depression didn't hit the Northeast as much, not very agricultural, okay? A lot of, small towns and things like that, they didn't see the effects of the Depression like you saw everywhere else, right? Hoover was even from Iowa, didn't even win his home state, okay? So this was a complete landslide. 2/3 or 57% of the country backed FDR and propelled him to victory, all right? So now FDR is going to try and solve the Depression through what's called the New Deal. All right, I'm going to show you one more visual here, okay? Something called the 3 R's, which was basically Roosevelt's philosophy toward ending the Depression. All right, try and make this a little bigger here if I can, okay? It's not cooperating. All right, sorry about that. But basically, to get out of the Depression, Roosevelt said we needed relief, recovery, and reform. All right, relief would be the immediate action that the government can take. Let's help these people out. So when he comes into office, he says that his first 100 days are going to be what he needs to improve the country. Okay, give me 100 days, and the actions then will get us out of this depression. So the first thing he does is he has a bank holiday. He closes the banks. All right, now what does that do? That prevents anybody from removing their deposits. So the banks can then get more money shipped into them from the government so they can reopen and function and start loaning money out again. Okay? Emergency Banking Act kind of fit in with that. Okay? As a Federal Emergency Relief Act, that's going to give immediate relief payments to people that are currently struggling, and then a Civil Works Administration to put the people to work for the government. All right? That's relief. Help people immediately. All right, then we get to recovery. We got to start getting out of this depression. All right, Roosevelt had a philosophy called pump priming, that we're going to pump the economy through giving it money and started jump-started by getting people spending again. Okay, so the Agricultural Adjustment Act was part of that. Okay, that's going to help farmers out, start to stabilize some of the crop prices, pay farmers not to work so they can start making a little bit more money. All right. Another big one here is the Works Progress Administration. This is actually going to be found unconstitutional eventually, but this is going to pay people to work. Some of the things they did was interviewed slaves, translated newspapers from other countries, kind of took historians, librarians, put them to work. Artists, just doing work for the government, but was deemed unconstitutional. And then reform, all right, is the permanent programs that we're going to avoid this from happening again. All right, Securities Exchange Commission is created to regulate the stock market, make sure there's no insider trading. I can talk about that Monday if you ask me. Securities actually is a good word for the word wall. It reminds me of that. To regulate people from doing inside dealings and shady stuff like that. There's a FDIC that you might see in your banks that's going to guarantee your deposits. Back then it was up to, I want to say, $10,000, so maybe $5,000. So if the bank failed, the government would pay you back essentially with extra money. Social Security, we're going to debate that on Tuesday. And then there's a National Labor Relations Board. All 4 of these are still in existence today, and all 4 of these are regulating the economy and protecting the worker, the consumer, and so on. All right. Thank you for listening. Today's installment of the Kuhn Academy. Hope you all have a great weekend, and we will catch up with this on Monday. Remember, we're not just learning history, we're making history.